Hey guys, and welcome back to Battlefront updates and some more Star Wars Battlefront 2 content. In this video I wanted to talk a little bit about flying, because I haven't really talked a lot about that so far, which is probably because I don't really like flying in any game, so that's why I put it off for now. And I don't have a whole lot of gameplay, since I basically just decided to play with each fighter once or twice and then I didn't touch them for the entire event. And I also want to quickly remind you that we will be getting space battles details at Gamescom, so for now we will have to base this off the starfighters that was available on the Assault of Theed. So the main thing I want to talk about is that yes, the flying has now been improved, and I'm so glad they actually implemented it the way that I wanted it to be and the way it was in the previous Battlefront games, where you don't have a lock-on that makes your blaster hit right on the enemy, but this time you actually have to manually aim on the enemy and fire. But as you can see, you get a little indicator in front of the enemy, which basically helps you to know where you should aim, and if you aim at it, it's very likely that you will hit them, since obviously the lasers have a little bit of a delay. So that is simply something to help you out, but other than that you gotta do it completely manually and not just hold down the lock-on button and spam the blaster. However, you can still lock on for things like missiles, which makes a lot of sense because otherwise it would be impossible to hit with them, but the lock-on system for them also works a little bit differently, where you actually have to press and it starts locking on and then you press again to release. But I don't want to go into too much detail regarding each ability because, as I mentioned, I haven't tried them out enough to give you an in-depth look at them. However, in terms of the movement, that has also been changed, because this time you don't have 3 fixed movements on cooldown that you can actually use to do like a 180 turn or spin around, but you can actually manually spin your ship by using the A and D keys on PC or the respective pads and buttons on the consoles. And this makes it so much fun because you can actually spin freely. If you want to, you can just keep spinning around just like Anakin in the Phantom Menace, and that's a good way for you to actually dodge the enemies. And it also means that you can get into some tight spaces because you can go and fly sideways and then go through something that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And as you can understand, this also means that the auto leveling system that they had in the previous game is also gone, so if you want to fly upside down, be my guest. And I think this will raise the skill ceiling quite a bit for flying and hopefully please all of those who thought the flying in the previous game was too simple. It is however not as complicated as in Battlefield, which I am honestly very glad about, because I really hate flying in Battlefield, and I can imagine that there's going to be a lot of more casual players who play this game compared to Battlefield. So if they want to get into a starfighter but feel like it's too complicated, well, then they will probably just do it once and twice and then give up. So I would say that the hard part, at least when I played right now, is to actually hit enemies and also dodge enemies. Flying around just to getting from point A to B and trying to get wherever you want to be, that is a lot easier, which I think is good, and it's not too overwhelming. However, actually trying to hit someone and kill people, that's where it gets tricky, because you can't just hold down the lock-on key and fire anymore. And if the enemy is good at dodging and swaying back and forth and spinning, well, that's obviously gonna make your job a lot harder as well. And if we're gonna talk briefly about strafe running, I can say that it's pretty hard to spot the enemies on the ground. However, when you learn where the spawns are and where the objectives are located at, you can actually rain down some pretty heavy fire on them and get a couple of kills, because some people stayed up in the air during almost the entire event, and at the end of it I kept dying from starfighters so much because they just strafe run after strafe run and they knew exactly where I was at all times. So I think that's something they need to look into for the final game to make sure that it's not too bad. And lastly, just to mention some quick abilities, some of the ships had astromechs that could heal you, a little bit like Luke's in the previous game, and they also had a very cool rapid fire ability where basically you pop it and it just unleashes a lot of blaster bolts in 1 or 2 seconds. But it was really hard to hit with that, and I didn't manage to kill any enemy ships with it, but I think that is really one of the skill abilities that the better pilots will be able to really effectively use to kill enemies, whereas for me it was basically just like, oh, I popped it, then it just fired it out randomly and I had no idea what I was doing. So I thought that was pretty good, because with the short time I had with this flying, I felt like there was a lot to learn compared to the previous game, and I'm really excited to see how they're gonna handle space battles, since that is something they will be talking about at Gamescom. And if I get the chance to play the game there, I will obviously be forced to fly, and after that I will probably be able to give you a bit more in-depth details about how it felt and what I thought was good and bad. But those are all the details I have for you right now regarding the flying in Star Wars Battlefront 2. In short, it has been drastically improved. Thank you guys very much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.